Hey everybody, welcome to episode 140 of the AskDAP show, where I answer your Volkswagen and Audi questions. On this episode, we talk about Mark 7s with grinding gears, intake cleaners, and are they effective and do more harm than good, and IS-20s on a 1.8T.
Sadan via YouTube asked, is it possible to upgrade a IS-20 turbo on a 2016 Volkswagen Passat 1.8T?
So IS-20 on a B7 Passat. Yes, I suspect it should bolt up, no issue. Much like the engine on the Mark 7s, they do have software. Unitronic has software that goes onto the Mark 7s for IS-20 upgrades. The hardware to me is less of a concern, although there probably is going to be some variation between some of the hardware piping and things like that you may have to do some customization. I don't think that's actually too big of a deal. That would be fairly easily solved. You may have to do some minor fabrication to make that happen, but I don't think it would be a big deal. The larger concern for me would be on the software end, because I don't think you're going to find somebody who's going to make software for a Passat, due to the fact that there's going to be very few people who will be willing to spend the money to do that kind of upgrade on that type of vehicle. So because of that, you're going to have to do custom tuning. So if you were to be able to find somebody to do custom tuning for you, I think it would be a good option. But if you don't know somebody who's going to be able to tune that thing for you, then you may have a problem, and that would be the biggest barriers going through that project.
Nickolas via YouTube asked, what are your thoughts on products such as CRC intake valve cleaner spray for gasoline direct injection engines? Have you tried them, and will they do more harm than good?
All right, CRC intake cleaner. So I can't say I have specific experience with that one, but I think they're all kind of similar in the fact of what they do and what they accomplish. I don't think it's necessarily going to be harmful unless it were to erode the plastic in some way, which I don't think you're going to do a ton of damage to the intake manifold with those cleaners, as long as you're not letting them pool in the engine for a period of time. Then it could potentially eat away at the plastic enough to do some significant damage. I'm just not sure how much good they do. So the one thing I've talked about, and I think I've mentioned this in the past before, is that what you can do is spray them down the intake while it's running, and as kind of a preventative maintenance thing. That way some type of cleaner and material that's intended to take off some of that carbon is going to be on there semi-regularly and potentially prevent you from having to take off the intake manifold all the time. So that's really what I see as a possible preventative. To me, the only way to know, and this is what, unfortunately, the only way I would feel comfortable saying one way or the other whether using a method like that worked, would to be a long-term test. Let's say if we had two employees who had the same car, who drive the same type of drive every day. Let's say they drive highway, and then on the weekends maybe they do some around town driving, and so they put around a similar amount of miles. Is on one of them do it, on the other one don't, and then after 50,000 miles, pull both intake manifolds off and compare to show it. The problem is, most people, we don't have that actual scenario. If we did, I would do it, but because we don't, and I'm not sure there's many people who would be in that scenario that would be able to duplicate it in that same way, I just don't know how effective a strategy like that even is in the first place. So do I think it probably does something to help diminish the amount of carb buildup? I certainly think it could. I'm just not sure, is that 1%, 5%, 20%, 50%? I don't know. I'm not even sure if I would go as high as 50%, but it certainly has probably some effect. I'm just not sure if it's significant enough to make it worth doing.
MaytagAirsoft via YouTube asks, I have a big question, at least to me. I have a Mark 7 Golf TSI 5-speed manual, and it grinds into gears reverse, 3, and 5. And my foot's to the floor, and 5th does it all the time. Is it me or the car? Really need help. It's like it doesn't want to go into gear, like the clutch isn't releasing. I don't know if it's something to do with the slave, if the car even has a slave. I'm learning an automotive program, but I really need help.
Okay, so your grinding could be a slave cylinder related. I think it's possible that a slave cylinder is also the throwout bearing on that car. If you're not getting full engagement or disengagement from the clutch, then it's possible that's where you're getting grinding from. I suspect that's probably not the case, but you may want to consider trying to bleed it as a possibility. If you're getting it in just some situations, it makes me think that it's probably something related to your transmission itself, and it's probably due to how it's been driven. Synchros are things essentially that mesh the gear as it slides into gear to allow it to engage smoothly. If those are damaged and the teeth are messed up from people who are jamming gears or miss a gear or whatever a bunch of times, it could mar the teeth of those synchros. When that happens, you can end up with grinding. So the fact that it happens every time in fifth is kind of concerning, and the fact that it doesn't happen in the other gears makes me think if it was related to clutch engagement, it's going to happen all the time. Since that's not the case, it makes me suspect it's probably mechanical issues with the transmission itself. Reverse, however, does not have synchros, so it makes me question if there's damage. Maybe you don't allow the car to stop before jamming it into reverse, and so you've damaged the reverse teeth as well. I don't know. That's hard to say, but I suspect it's probably not clutch and throwout bearing slave cylinder related, just due to the fact that it doesn't happen all the time across the board. If it gets worse across the board on everything, then maybe you'll have more of an indication that it is clutch and or throwout bearing slave cylinder related. But for the time being, it makes me think it's mechanical in the transmission of what's going on.
Adam via YouTube asked, bringing my 2014 CC in Monday for an intake sensor. Will they do the intake swap for me if I insist on it as well as injectors and decarbonize for me? Okay,
so you're bringing your vehicle in for you said intake sensor. I don't know if you actually had a sensor go bad and they ordered you one as a replacement. The intake air temp sensor is in the intake manifold, I think above the throttle body in those cars, if my memory serves me correctly. So if you're going in for an intake sensor and you insist on replacing the intake itself, no, they're absolutely not going to do that under no circumstance. Same thing with a decarb or anything like that. If they're replacing the intake because it has faults with the intake position sensor, then I believe that sensor, if that is what you're referring to, there is a sensor that's part of the manifold that would likely be replaced. The manifold by itself would be replaced if you were to get faults for that. If you're saying, should you insist on a decarb at that point or injectors, you can ask them to do it and pay them to do it while you have the intake manifold off. They'll probably charge you somewhere in the 1 to 2 hours labor probably for doing the cleaning. I would definitely suggest doing that if you have any significant amount of buildup there. But if you insist on them doing it, they're certainly not going to do that. Same with injectors. Dealers do not have the option to warranty everything carte blanche just because they are common to fail. They can only warranty failed parts. So dealers don't have that kind of issue or that kind of authority to do. They basically do warranty repairs on your vehicle as needed. Volkswagen pays them to do those repairs. If they start doing repairs on just anything and everything they want to do, Volkswagen's not going to pay them, which means they're working on your car for free, including giving you free parts. So that is certainly not going to go down that way, but I would definitely recommend, while the intake is off, requesting them to clean it while they're doing it. Thanks so much for watching episode 140 of the AskDAP show, where I answer your Volkswagen and Audi questions. If you have any questions or comments about the questions answered in this show, be sure to leave in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more like it.